Have you ever driven for so long that the road began to feel like a ribbon leading not to a destination, but into the folds of your own memory? Tonight, allow the mist to settle. Let the hum of the wheels, the softness of your breath, and the gentle weight of your eyelids carry you across a threshold into something both forgotten and eternal. This is the tale of a quiet journey, of a couple wandering through Europe, crossing borders and languages until they find a place that doesn't appear on any map, a town where time has paused, where mirrors reflect lives not yet lived, and where an ancient library holds not books, but echoes of other selves. As you listen, don't try to hold on. Let the images drift past like mist on the window. Let each detail soften your thoughts until your body surrenders gently to sleep. And if this story brings you stillness, if it wraps round your dreams like stardust on an old page, consider subscribing to Mystical Sleep Tale. So many pass through these stories and vanish. But when you subscribe, you leave a trail of quiet light for the next dreamer to follow. Now, close your eyes, breathe slowly, and listen closely. The clock is about to stop, and Vinterloch is waiting. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon drawn from an old dream, winding between quiet hills and shadowed forests, draped in soft layers of mist that drifted low, brushing the tires of the car with ghost-like grace. It was late afternoon, though the sun clung to the same place in the sky for what felt like hours, a golden disk pinned behind slow-moving clouds that cast long, trembling shadows over the fields. Inside the car, time passed differently. Not faster, not slower, just sideways. She gazed out the window. Golden grass swayed in the distance, touched by a wind that didn't reach the road. He kept his hands on the wheel, his fingers light, his expression thoughtful. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was familiar, like an old song remembered only in part. They had been on the road for days now, through borders barely marked, villages with names worn off the signs, mountains that whispered cold secrets through the vents. Their trip had no real destination, only the promise of movement, of space, of quiet. But now, something felt different. The road signs had begun to repeat, not just in meaning, in shape, in spelling, in exactness. 3 kilometers back, they had passed a rusted metal sign, Café Sylvestre, to 6 kilometers, and now, there it was again. Same tilt, same dent in the corner. She sat up slightly. Didn't we? He nodded before she finished. I saw it too. The air inside the car dial on the radio cooler, static somehow. Then a piano melody, slow, haunting, the kind that makes you feel like someone else is remembering something you forgot. The dashboard clock read 3:17. She frowned. It had said that 20 minutes ago. She checked her phone. No signal. No time. Outside, the trees began to look familiar. The same twisted one leaning left. The same crooked fence splintered at the top rail. She whispered, "We're in a loop." He slowed the car. They both leaned forward, scanning the road as if the truth might appear in the gravel. Ahead, the mist thickened slightly, then parted, and there it was, a town. Not on any map, not in any plan, but suddenly inevitable. Stone buildings, ivy climbing soft facades, a fountain in the center, and a library framed in shadow like a memory that hadn't been made yet. The car rolled forward. Neither of them spoke, because something about this place didn't feel new. It felt remembered. The mist thinned just enough for the town to emerge, slowly, as if it were being painted before their eyes. Vinterloch. The name wasn't written anywhere, but somehow they both knew it. The car rolled forward, tires clicking softly over worn cobblestone. The square opened before them, elegant, quiet, and uncannily preserved, like a postcard from a forgotten decade left on a windowsill too long, faded at the edges, but never discarded. Shutters hung perfectly straight. Flower boxes overflowed with petunias and bluebells, as if spring had taken permanent residence. Lamps glowed amber behind all, wavy glass, not flickering, but steady, like watchful eyes that had never blinked. They passed a cafe, chairs tucked in neatly, menus written in looping cursive behind a foggy pane. On a table inside, 2 cups of tea, still warm, still steaming, no one in sight. She opened the car door slowly. The air had weight to it, not heavy, but intentional, like entering a chapel. Birdsong drifted somewhere beyond the rooftops, but no birds could be seen. Just echoes. They walked down the central street in silence, their footsteps tapping softly, each sound quickly swallowed as if the town were listening, but not yet ready to speak. A vintage bicycle leaned gently against a lamppost. No rust. Tires full, as if someone had just stepped inside for a moment and never returned. "I feel like we're intruding," he whispered. "No," she replied quietly. "I think we were expected." As they turned a corner, the square opened fully. At its center stood an old fountain, its surface completely still, not frozen, just suspended. Water balanced in midair in arcing streams that had paused mid-motion, like a breath held just before a word. A clock tower rose beside it, tall, elegant, weather-worn. The hands were stopped at 3:17, but they weren't metal. They were shaped like feathers, one silver, one black. A small breeze passed, soft as the sweep of a memory, and yet the feathers didn't move. To the left of the square stood the most unusual building of all, a library, dark, stone-kissed with climbing ivy, arched windows tall and narrow, stained glass pulsing with faint internal light, not from electricity, but from somewhere else. Above the carved oak doors, a plaque read, "Bibliothek der Vergessenen Stunden, the Library of Forgotten Hours." They approached slowly. As they drew near, they noticed a carving on the door, 2 interlocked rings, one whole, the other cracked, as if marking a promise made across time. He reached for the handle, but before he touched it, the door opened silently on its own. A gust of warm air met them, not stale, but scented with old wood. She looked at him. He looked at her. They stepped inside, and the door closed behind them with the finality of a page turning itself. Inside, the air felt heavy, not with dust, but with meaning. The silence was profound, like the hush that follows a sacred promise, or the stillness in a theater just before the curtain rises. The door behind them melted into shadow. There was no turning back now. The library was vast, far larger than it had seemed from outside. Ceilings stretched far above them, arched like the inside of a cathedral, etched with golden constellations that shimmered faintly each time they exhaled. Bookshelves lined the circular walls, reaching impossibly high, carved from dark, ancient wood with edges softened by time and fingertips. The air smelled of wax, cedar, and parchment. Not the brittle kind, but pages worn gently, like memories you keep unfolding in your hands year after year. A soft golden light came from nowhere, or perhaps from everywhere. It moved with them subtly, as though illuminating only what they needed to see. They passed reading tables covered in velvet cloths, each with a single object upon it, a feather quill, a key without teeth, a dried flower sealed in glass, a single glove stitched with stars. Then they saw it. At the center of the room, beneath a great domed ceiling, was a low circular table. Upon it rested one open book. As they approached, The air thickened, not threatening, but expectant. She leaned over the page and froze. There, written in delicate ink, was a conversation they'd had earlier that morning. Word for word, even the sentence she almost said, but changed at the last second, was written here in both versions. He read the next paragraph aloud, slowly. They will step inside the library just after the clock stalls. They will not know what they've lost, but they will feel it pressing against their breath. He stopped. A low hum filled the room, faint, organic. The shelves trembled slightly. She turned the page blank, but as her fingers brushed the parchment, letters emerged, not in ink, but in light. Like the page was remembering her. Their names appeared full, true, including middle names neither of them ever used. Beneath the names, a place. Vinterloch. Return no. Three, her lips parted. What does that mean? But he wasn't listening. He was staring upward. The ceiling dome above them was no longer a ceiling. It had become sky, real sky, with stars slowly moving in reverse. And through that dome, they saw themselves on a different road, walking toward the same town from another angle, another time. She turned. Now the shelves were glowing. Each book pulsed like a heartbeat, and some of them had their faces carved faintly into the spine. Not just them as they were now, but as children, elders, strangers they had never been, but somehow recognized. A whisper stirred the air, not from behind, not from the books, from the floorboards. A voice, soft as breath, choose the version you wish to remember. And just like that, a mirror appeared in the far wall, liquid and silver, rippling with images not. He took a step toward it. So did she, and in the reflection, they were already inside. They stood before the mirror, its surface no longer glass, but something fluid, like mercury woven with starlight. Their reflection shimmered, not distorted, but divided. Multiple versions of themselves faded in and out. One younger, one older, one alone. One version of her wore a long braid and a ring she didn't recognize. One version of him carried a satchel and looked toward her with a quiet pain. Each echo moved slightly differently, as if shaped by decisions they had never made. Yet every gesture felt familiar. I don't think these are visions, she whispered. I think they're records. He nodded slowly. Versions of us lived through different loops. They turned back to the book. The page with their names glowed softly, and beneath it, a new section appeared, written in her own handwriting. Only she had never written it. We came through once before. He remembered the road. I remembered the scent of the books. She touched the ink. It was warm. Then a memory unfolded inside her, not a flash, but a full feeling. She was seated in this library. Same light, same book, only it was her alone. And she was waiting for him. Her breath caught. His hand brushed hers. I saw it too, he said. There was a version where I came alone. You never found the turn-off. They looked at each other, and in the silence between their breaths, an understanding bloomed. This place, this library, was not only a keeper of time. It was a weaver of choice into reality. A memory that has to be chosen. The pages turned again, gently, windlessly. Now they showed drawings, maps of the town, sketches of the square, small notes in the margins, written in various handwritings. All versions of theirs. They flipped through carefully. One page showed a small home with a blue door. We stayed here, a note said. It was quiet. We forgot the world for a while. Another page showed only the road. No town. Just this time, we turned round. She placed a hand on the center of the book. The ink rippled. Beneath her palm, new words surfaced. You may choose to wake, or choose to remain. But either way, the book will remember. The mirror dimmed. Behind them, one of the bookshelves silently shifted, revealing a narrow archway lit with soft, shifting blue light, like moonlight filtered through water. The voice returned. Not a sound, not a whisper, a presence. You've read the story. Now it's time to decide whether to live it or leave it behind. And so they stepped toward the arch, hand in hand, carrying the weight of every version of themselves they had never become, and perhaps never would, unless they stayed. The hallway beyond the arch felt alive. It didn't echo, yet every footstep made the air respond, a tremble in the walls, a soft flicker of the blue light that lined the floor like veins. Here, there were no books, no shelves, only memories in form. Objects floated gently in alcoves carved into the stone, not displayed, but suspended as if resting between moments. She stopped before the first, a porcelain cup cracked on one side, with a lipstick mark in a shade she'd never worn, but that made her heart tighten. He stood before a compass, its needle spinning in slow circles, though there was no magnetic field. Another alcove held a pair of shoes, children's size, hand-stitched leather, one slightly more worn than the other. No labels, no explanations, just memory, caught in stillness. And then came the visions, not like dreams, not like hallucinations, felt memories. She was washing dishes, sunlight pouring over her hands. A window open, laughter outside, a man and a child playing. She turned and recognized the child's eyes as her own. He was sitting beneath a tree, autumn leaves round him. In his lap, a notebook filled with a script he didn't know how to write, yet somehow had written. Each vision passed through them like wind through tall grass, not disturbing, only reminding of who they could have been, of what the loops had offered before, of the love they had that always returned in every vision. They entered a wider chamber. At its center stood a pedestal, and above it floated a globe of glass, within which spiraled small flickers of light, memories from every life, their lives, or reflections of them. As they approached, the globe pulsed. A voice spoke, not aloud, but within. Every time you return, you remember a little more, and what you remember begins to choose you back. The pedestal lowered, revealing two objects side by side. One was a key, iron, simple, worn smooth by use. The other was a ring, silver, with a faint symbol etched on the inside, a feather wrapped round a circle. He picked up the key, she picked up the ring, and as they did, the chamber filled with warm, amber light, not from above, but from within the walls themselves. The time had come, not to move forward, but to decide how to remember. When they stepped back through the arch, the library was no longer the same. It hadn't changed, but something round it had softened, opened. The shelves still loomed, the velvet-draped tables remained in their sacred stillness, but now there were footprints on the floor. Many, some old, some new, leading in and out of places they hadn't noticed before. The mirror was gone. So was the central book. In its place, an empty chair facing the domed ceiling, as if waiting for someone to sit and watch the sky breathe. They didn't speak, only walked together as the door opened ahead of them again, this time on its own, and with no hesitation. The outside air kissed their faces. The square hadn't moved. The clock tower still read 3:17, but now the feathered hands gently swayed, as if ticking in a rhythm to settle for a sound. The fountain flowed, water slipping silently through stone, ripples catching the starlight that filtered through pale clouds. But most of all, the town felt aware. A curtain on a second-floor window twitched, then stilled. A door clicked closed somewhere in the distance, but no footsteps followed. She looked toward the cafe. The teacups were gone. Now, there was a fresh loaf of bread on the table, half sliced, as if someone had just been eating there moments ago. "They live here," she whispered. "Don't they?" He nodded slowly. "The ones who stayed. They wandered to the bakery. Its windows no longer misted. Inside, through the glass, they saw two figures moving slowly. Not ghosts, but projections, echoes. One of them was her. Not as she looked now, but older. Hair tied back, flour on her hands, a calm smile on her face as she kneaded dough beside the man. The same man beside her now. He reached out, not to touch, but to acknowledge. The scene shimmered, then faded. They walked to the square. The walls of the buildings pulsed faintly, like lungs exhaling a secret they'd been holding for decades. At the center of the fountain now sat a small object, a ring. The same silver one with the feather inside. She picked it up. It was warm. Engraved beneath it, barely visible. "You've been here before, and you will come again." She held it to her heart. A breeze circled them gently, lifting her hair, rustling the fallen petals round the square. It didn't ask them to stay, but it didn't let them forget either. They stood quietly, watching as the town blinked slowly, once, and the stillness returned, like a story pausing between sentences. They followed the soft curve of a side street as it led them away from the square, drawn by something unseen but deeply familiar. The cobblestones gave way to mossy stone steps, winding downward between ancient walls covered in ivy and thyme. The path opened into a secluded courtyard. No noise, no wind. Only a tree in the center, its branches pale silver, its leaves made of paper. They fluttered slightly, even though the air stood still. Beneath the tree stood a pedestal, and on it the book. The same midnight blue leather, though now the cover bore no title, only a circle. She stepped closer, and the leaves above rustled softly. Some detached and drifted down around her like memories too gentle to be called thoughts. He opened the book. Inside, there were no words, only images. Each page held a scene, one of the town, one of the road, one of her alone, one of him at a desk by a frozen window, one of both of them together in a place that didn't yet exist. Possibility, no explanations. The book turned a page on its own, and for the first time, words appeared. "You may stay, and remember, or wake, and forget." A long pause stretched between them. The tree above released another leaf. It landed in her hand. On it, a sketch. 2 chairs beside a fireplace. 2 mugs of tea. A cat curled on the rug. A version of peace. But not this life. She looked up at him. "I don't want to forget," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But I also don't want to disappear." He stepped beside her. "You won't," he said softly. "We've already remembered too much." He placed his hand over hers, and together they turned the next page. This one was blank. And slowly, as if written by time itself, new letters appeared, together. "You chose to return, but not to stay. The memory will soften, but it will not fade." The book pulsed once beneath their tongue. A warm glow rose from its spine, circling them gently, as if sealing something unspoken. Behind them, a soft chime echoed through the courtyard. They turned. An old archway had appeared in the ivy-covered wall, not stone, but made entirely of woven branches and silver leaves. It shimmered. Beyond it, the road and the sky, no longer still, but alive. They walked toward the arch, and just before stepping through, she turned once more. The tree shimmered and whispered without sound. Some stories choose to be remembered. The archway behind them closed without sound, not like a door, but like a breath, inhaled, then still. They stood once more in the town square, but everything was different now. The air no longer felt suspended. It moved slowly, softly, carrying with it the scent of moss, baked bread, and something harder to name, like memory, folded into the wind. The fountain trickled again, water falling gently over stone as if it had never paused. The bakery windows were clear. Inside, the same bread sat untouched, but this time the chairs beside the table were pulled out, as if someone had risen only moments before. They walked without words, down the path where they had first arrived. Each step was lighter, but not because the burden was gone, because it had been accepted. The vintage car sat where they had left it, the silver body glinting under a sky now pale and blue. Birdsong drifted through the trees. Real now, or close enough. He opened the passenger door for her. Inside, on the seat, rested a closed book. Midnight Blue Leather .UNT the same. But now, it bore a thin ribbon of golden thread, tied in a knot only they would recognize. He didn't touch it. Neither did she. Some things are better left carried, not opened. The dashboard clock had begun again, or had chosen to let them notice it. He turned the key. The engine started with a hum that sounded almost like a sigh of relief. As they pulled away from the square, she looked back. Vinterloch remained, unmoving, unchanged, unbothered by being left behind. But just before the curve in the road, she saw something in the rearview mirror. A figure, distant, standing at the edge of the fountain, watching. Not waving, not beckoning, just witnessing. And then the mist rose again, and the figure was gone. She closed her eyes, rested her head against the window. "I don't think we'll ever find that town again," she murmured. "No," he said, "but I think it'll find us. When it needs to." The road stretched ahead. Signs they hadn't noticed before marked the next village. The clouds shifted, and sunlight pooled gently across the hills. The book lay between them, still closed, still warm, still remembering. The road unfolded before them like parchment unrolling beneath the wheels, familiar, but newly drawn. The sky was in motion again. Clouds moved gently overhead, casting slow dancing shadows across fields of lavender and wheat. No more looping, no more static time. Yet everything still felt and real in the most comforting of ways. She sat quietly, her head resting against the window, eyes half closed, watching the landscape blur into tones of gold and blue. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting between them, touching, lightly, the cover of the closed book. They didn't speak, not out of fatigue, but because silence was the only language that fit what they carried now. A bird flew overhead. Its wings curved like a signature across the sky. The same sky they had stared into from the library dome. The radio flickered to life. A soft piano tune began, not the same as before, but sharing its like a lullaby rewritten in another key. On the seat beside her, the book shifted. Not much, just enough. She placed her hand over it, felt its quiet thrum. It wasn't asking to be opened. It was only reminding her, it's still here. They passed a wooden signpost. No arrows, No distances. Just a single word carved in fading letters. Remember, she smiled, barely, and turned her gaze forward. The hills widened. The wind carried warmth again. The road went on, and though neither of them could fully say what had changed, they knew something had. Not behind them, not round them, dot within. Because some places you visit with your feet, and others you carry forever in the quiet between heartbeats. And now, the road continues. You may not remember every detail, the name on the signpost, the feel of the book in your lap, or the echo of clocks that never moved, but something within you has quietly shifted. Perhaps it was a moment, a sound, a version of yourself you didn't know was waiting to be remembered. If this journey brought you calm, if it softened the edges of your thoughts and held you gently in its silence, please consider subscribing to Mystical Sleep Tale. When you subscribe, you help keep the door open for another soul seeking rest. And if any part of this story stayed with you, a peach, a mirror, a version of you in another world, share it in the comments below. And now, if your eyes are still open, click on the story appearing on your screen. Because if tonight's tale held you close, the next one may carry you even deeper into the dreamscape. With stardust and soft dreams, Mystical Sleep Tales.